Dr. Acharya, I'm interested to hear what your view might be in terms of whether or not that is money well spent. As Dr. Ahluwalia pointed out, to cover the entire cost of vaccination for the citizenry. B, to create some kind of jobs guarantee scheme. And there's been a lot of talk about creating a parallel of MG Narega in the urban context as well. And C, whether you think this is the time to also take on the bank situation, where we've sort of pushed the can down the road going into this year in terms of extending the moratorium. But do you think that banks as well might get addressed, and that would be money well spent?
Okay, Mitali. First of all, I think I have complete agreement that we should have the vaccination drive, which will, of course, go on for more than 1 year, but probably not forever, funded completely. So there's no question, money should not be the issue. And it's as Monty pointed out, it's basically has the elements of a pure public good, where if you give me a jab, it not only helps me, but it helps those who live around me, because I'm not a disease spreader to that extent anymore. So that's what public goods are, as defined as you know, in economic theory. So that would be a great thing, and I think I would even go further than, in one sense, that I would be not averse to having, if you were finding money raising a difficulty, and the kind of asset sales that Sajid was talking about, not happening to the extent that is desirable, I would have no problem with a cess, possibly a shareable one, which is levied on the income taxes, but which is removed after 2 years or some very reasonable sunset clause, and is totally earmarked for vaccination and public health requirements. So that priority is very clear. I think when you get to something you mentioned about the sort of urban employment guarantee kind of thing. Well, before we get to the urban one, to the extent that the Manrega is being, the mandates are not being offered because of an expenditure constraint, then clearly that's a high priority to release that constraint by more spending. And you have to release the money, make it available to the states. So it's got to be, the transfer mechanism has to be there for that, which it is. But there was discussion back in, I think, summer of June, July, if I recall correctly, to, because recognizing the hardships, huge hardships, one should not in any way minimize that large sections of the population went through, 10 million people who kind of informal sector workers in urban areas, particularly metropolises, making very painful journeys back home to an uncertain future there. That, to the extent it can be relieved by having some sort of low-end employment guarantee scheme, which is workable. And the key thing is, what is workable? I'm not sure. In urban areas, I think would be a good priority. I would, though, approach it somewhat experimentally and not immediately say, there's going to be a zillion thousand crores available for that, because I think the making it work may be a bit more difficult than in the rural context. Thirdly, I think, and this comes from from a geopolitical perspective, I think we have to increase defense expenditure. That's been falling as a share of GDP for quite some time, now down to, 1.6 or 1.7. It used to be well above 2 in my memory, and not too far back. And we need to get it back. And for obvious reasons, that has to be done. So I would say those are my priorities in terms of expenditure.